All right, we're going to call to order the Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting. It's a special meeting due to our regular time switched over. We typically meet on the third Mondays, but because of the holiday, we switched over. And I hope everybody enjoyed the holiday. I did, and there were several events here in Annapolis taking place and ways that we can all get engaged. And so, without further ado, I'll call the roll. My colleague from Ward 5 he works in DC, so he'll be here temporarily. He's on the bus en route here. Alderman Tierney?
Present.
And
Present.
Alderman Gay is present. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, but I'm going to actually make a motion to amend the agenda. Motion to remove ID 23722, proposed conversation on Lent control legislation, as it's redundant to 05022.
Okay.
And that'll be it.
Okay. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is business and miscellaneous, approval of our amendments. Approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the Housing and Human Welfare minutes from the 10/17/22 regular meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is ID 26222, plan of action by property managers. Kaylin, the two forms that they have submitted, can we have these attached online in some way, shape, or form to the city webpage, just so that residents are able to follow up on what they submitted?
I'll put it under the housing and human welfare tab.
Okay. That'll be great. And I'm not sure, Alderwoman, if you have the documents, but I do. I'm not going to discuss them in detail tonight due to the agenda length. But we did receive on November the 12th and November the 17th, respective documents from Enterprise Residential and Woodside Gardens Apartment, detailing everything that we went over in regards to the conditions of the properties late last year. We had not had a chance to follow up in great detail because obviously after the 17th was Thanksgiving, and we were out for 2 weeks after that, and we came back for 2 weeks, and our regularly scheduled meeting in December was, I think, the week of the holiday, and so we did not meet that week either. Chris from Woodside Gardens has kept in communications with their community outreach newsletter that they do. He just sent it to us, actually, I think last week. We haven't followed up with Admiral Oaks, but I do know that the Planning and Zoning Department did go through and do one-to-one inspections on Admiral Oaks, and there were a number of concerns expressed by the inspectors and also by Alderwoman Pendell Charles, who wrote in great detail an email to us about what she's seen on some of the properties. And so I don't know what took place there, but we'll put in a request from Planning and Zoning to follow up on that as well. If you could you make note of that too for us? So we can, because just so that we can, have the latest information. But nonetheless, we'll add that into the record. And again, it's just these two documents, and I encourage the public to view them. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I do want to mention, subsequent to that inspection at Admiral Oaks and, realizing a lot of these issues were related to water, I drafted proposed legislation to address those issues. I did some homework on mold remediation, et cetera, but it's sort of, Cynthia can help me. She helped me do some research, but it's not an opportune time to address the remediation issue because of legal things, and also it's really it's really rules and regulations. There's no mold remediation code right now. The state will draft something within this legislative year, at least they hope to, according to Shanika. Mm-hmm. And some of the suggestions I made as far as water infiltration were more like constructability. So the Office of Law didn't think that it was necessary to put in the code. I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that.
No, that's totally fine.
So it's sort of at a standstill, and Michael Laplace is, I guess, charged with reviewing the planning and, the entire code relative to planning and zoning, so it's all sort of at a standstill.
Yeah, and I actually was at an event with Delegate Henson this past Sunday, I believe. We were speaking on housing amongst a number of other panelists as well, and she mentioned that she would be, in fact, introducing that legislation
Yeah.
again. She's done it 3 times. This is the 3rd legislative session, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why the state legislature won't get it out of the committee.
Yeah, and we'll piggyback on that. Once she has legislation, then
Yeah.
we can,
I'm not sure what other options we have at this point. I do know that there is funding available, and I'll have to follow back up with the county councilwoman. She had mentioned that their planning and zoning department, I believe, has access to funding, and that's not just for the mold stuff. That's also for rodent infestation they have, and so I follow back up with that. That's been at the top of people's concerns as well. So
we
okay.
have a new planning and zoning director, too.
Do you need these, or are you okay? Awesome. Can you just print a copy for me, or 2? Could you?
These are the ones that you sent to me already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, no.
They're in email.
That's fine. You can keep
Okay, awesome.
uploading.
No further questions? Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is appointments and reappointments, starting with AP 123, appointment to the Haka Board of Commissioners. Webb Herbert. Awesome. Yep, please feel free to come straight to the front. We appreciate it very much. And this is an appointment from the Office of the Mayor, and it is to the Haka Board of Commissioners. And so the process works. It'll get out of here today. It will be at the City Council meeting next Monday.
Monday.
Okay, and it'll be at the City Council meeting Monday for review by the full body. So they'll have the application and all that as well.
You can come.
Okay.
For the general public that does not know our relations with the Haka Board, the mayor recommends the members of the board, and they're approved by the City Council. And that's where our relationship ends with any of the board members. We cannot fire board members. To my knowledge, I think to everybody's knowledge in here. And we cannot interfere in any way with the legal business of the board. Obviously we are able to communicate on projects and, things of severity to our constituency. But please feel free to introduce yourself and explain your interest in the board. And then if we have any questions, you'll have an opportunity to answer them.
Okay. Just good evening. My name is.
Can you make sure the green light is on?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I had my thyroid removed in May, so my voice is a little scratchy. Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Henrietta Webb Herbert. I'm a senior at Morris Bloom Senior Community, which is located at 701 Glenwood Street here in Annapolis, Maryland, 21401. And I applied for the commissioner's position because I've worked in the past as a resident on the resident council as president and acting vice president of the resident councils. And I'm interested in promoting the quality of seniors and also folks with disabilities that are located in Morris Bloom Senior Community, and also to enhance our community, to make our lives now that we are seniors, more enjoyable, enjoying our grandchildren, participating in hobbies, that types of things. And I really believe that I have the knowledge, the skills, and abilities based on my previous experiences as a teacher, educator, science teacher, as a contract specialist, contract administrator.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Alderwoman Tierney, did you have any questions?
I we have your resume. It's very impressive. And, I want to add that you're also, I guess, how do you say it, an alumni of leadership
Yes, yes.
in Arundel.
Yeah, Leadership Anne Arundel, 27, same class as Jacqueline Wells. We graduated in the same class.
Do you know Alderwoman O'Neill, who is the alderwoman of that?
Yes, she's in my districts. I know her, but I don't know the others.
I don't know if she's seen this. I'm sure she'd be really pleased to have you represent Morris. To focus on Morris Bloom. I know
Yes.
that's near and dear to her. So
Morris Bloom, the base of Clay Street, right? Correct.
Yes, it's Clay Street, and then as you continue down the hill, it becomes Glenwood to Taylor. And it's just right in that curve across from the creek.
Okay, what's the school right there?
yeah, it's hidden.
There's a school. I forget.
Yes, there is a school.
Yeah, I
right
forget the
across.
name.
Is it
Yeah.
a private?
Are they going through renovation currently?
I'm sorry.
Are they going through a renovation? Do you know?
You mean the building?
Morris Bloom. Yeah.
Yes, TCB is the developers that are working towards renovating the building.
Okay. I'd be interesting to hear your take on that offline, if you don't mind. As she mentioned, I think that your resume meets the needs and qualifications as far as I'm concerned, and you
Yes.
also graduated from an HBCU. That's a plus,
Right,
and you have
right.
extensive experience with government relations, and so. I look forward to, working with you as a member of the board, if confirmed next Monday.
Okay.
Do we make a recommendation? Is that?
Yep, we
Yeah,
can make a
okay.
recommendation.
So I could make that.
And I'm sure if Alderman Shandemeyer has questions, he'll follow up with you with your email or phone. I'll make a motion to recommend to the full body council Henrietta Gilson Webb Herbert.
I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Recommend favor.
I'm sorry. All in favor to recommend favorably? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Awesome. Thank you so much. We
Thank you
appreciate your time.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you. I look forward to serving my community.
Definitely. Thanks. Look forward to having you. If you can, feel free to come Monday if you like as well.
Okay.
Monday night at 7:00.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Next item on the agenda is AP 223, appointments for the Affordable Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, Halverson. Is Mr. Halverson the one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's rich.
Did you have any questions on this application?
No,
Alderwoman Tinner?
No, a Navy grad. I'm just really happy that he's interested in the. Yeah, how many members do we have? On
If you wouldn't mind, Teresa, could you? I just want to be sure that everything is clear with you on this as well. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to get updated. No. Yes.
No, I haven't.
Okay. Do you want to review it really quickly before we? Have you seen the resume?
No, not yet.
Another name for record.
Can you state your name for the record? I'm sorry.
Teresa Wellman, Planning and Zoning.
Awesome. Thank you. Kaylin, how? Sorry.
Okay, because my phone is too small for me.
You can just scroll over. It's 5 pages.
Okay.
There's two of them. There's two of them.
Yeah.
And we don't see them. They don't typically come to the liaisons in
Okay.
advance.
Yeah, that's. I think just for clarification, the reason I'd like her to is because she is the primary liaison and staff member for the commission, and I just think it's good for her to have input on that. And as you'll be working close with him, and I think he'll be helping us, is we try to get some of the housing and affordability task force things out of the work as well. So he couldn't be here tonight, but as I think we all mentioned we seem pretty satisfied with the application and his interest. But he did mention that he would be willing to get on a phone call or meet with us anytime in the meantime, in between time. So feel free, Brooks, before you come up here, can you bring my iPad back?
Sure.
Feel free to just reach out to him, or I could put you all on an email together as well.
Sure, I can give him a call and
Awesome, thank you.
talk to him. And we do have a couple other people that have expressed interest. And there's some strange way about the way this committee's organized that aldermen get to make 3 of the recommendations, and the committee gets to make the other 3 of the recommendations.
And
So we have to keep track, so I guess Hillary keeps track of whose recommendations are whose.
Yeah, and I think, as you mentioned, we just reached capacity. But to my knowledge, there is no restriction on member participation unless it says 1 per ward, is it? Okay, so we'll have to go back
That's a
and look.
Hillary question.
Okay, we can go back and look, yeah, because I know we ran into a situation with the planning commission where the state actually mandates the number of members, and I'm not sure if that's,
I think our
follow
code-
up on that at some point. Yeah, thanks.
I think our code states that there'll be 7 members,
Okay.
and then
So-
it states who gets to
To pick who?
recommend, right.
All right,
So,
so we can follow up on that, and we'll just stay in touch. And if we need to, I say, hey, let's add more. It's always good to have more participation and interest,
well-
particularly on such complex issues.
well, I did send out notices to the 2 people that said that they were interested.
Okay.
Told them how to apply and everything, but as far as I know, they haven't applied yet, so.
Was Karen Britton, does that ring a bell?
Karen.
One was Quentin Cummins.
Okay,
He
Quentin.
was on the task force.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the other gentleman is Greg Cantori,
Okay.
right, okay.
who's,
Good.
So yeah, I think we should definitely follow up and see if there's room on that we can add, or if we can get them maybe even for the board or something. Who knows?
I'll take care of
Can't
it.
make a motion on Karen tonight?
No, we can. We
Oh,
can.
okay.
Yeah. We're good to go. Any further questions on this motion? Hearing none. All in favor for a favorable recommendation of Rich Halverson to the full council?
Wait, do you want me to make the motion, or,
Didn't you make a motion?
yeah,
Can you make? Okay.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in favor for a favorable recommendation?
Aye. None opposed. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I feel like I should abstain since I came into the discussion late. I apologize.
Okay. No problem. So we got 2 yeses, 1 abstention. Thanks.
No, that was not a condemnation of the applicant. Just feel like I got in late and I should have listened to the whole thing. I do apologize for my lateness.
It's no problem at all. We appreciate it, seriously. Next item on the agenda is AP 323, appointment to the Affordable Housing Community Equity Development Commission of Karen Britton. Would you mind coming forward? Thank you so much. And you can just take a quick moment to introduce yourself, and then if the council has any questions, then. Yep.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Karen Britton. I'm at 18 Cornhill Street, Annapolis, 21401. I really want to join this commission a lot, inspired by Alderman Gay, but I have 10 years of real estate experience, 5+ years in nonprofit with United Way. I am a landlord engagement specialist, so I know the landlord side, but I also work with clients to help them find housing, and then I also spend a lot of time renovating housing to create housing. So affordable housing is really my passion. And now at the Lighthouse, I work as a landlord engagement coordinator, do the same work. So I really want to be a part of the process.
Yeah, I motion favorable recommendation. Did you move from East Street to Cornhill?
I
or-
did. I just moved like yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Not a far move, so it was a little easy.
Any questions, Alderman?
No, well, one, just congratulations on the new house. Two, thank you for your interest in this commission. It's probably going to be one of the most important fights that we have here in the city, just for our future and where we want to be. Do we want to continue to be exclusionary and pushing out our young and working families, or do we want to be the inclusive city that we all say we want? And I appreciate you following through on this.
Agreed. Thank you.
Yeah, your qualities bring everything to the table to be a great member of this commission. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, and we've had a chance to talk plenty of times, and I appreciate it very much, and look forward to working in this capacity on the commission, but also for the work that you do on the Lighthouse Shelter, which helps constituents from all of our wards. So thank you for that as well. There was a
All right.
motion. There was a second.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And you can also come next Monday if you'd like at 7 o'clock p.m.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda is, and we're rocking and rolling because we got our staff here. Next item on the agenda is 04022, workforce housing for the purpose of allowing workforce housing as permitted use subject to standards in certain residential, commercial, office, and mixed-use districts, establishing the standards for workforce housing generally related to zoning. So let's bring up the staff on this, please, or anyone who has worked on the commission or would like to assist with amendments. I don't see anyone here for public testimony. Nope. Okay, so we can jump right into it. If you all wouldn't mind coming up to the front table. Oh, of course, yeah. 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 Bond, yep. Awesome, I appreciate it very much, and again, just because there are a few other people, is anybody speaking on it, or are we all just following along? Okay, awesome, thanks. So for starters, I have one bill that says original, another that says edit, and then another that says revised, okay? And so I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and what legislation that we're following on. Is that everybody's got the right versions? I think the revised copy was the last copy given out at our meeting in October.
Right, but the one that's, I believe the one that we were allowed to take to planning commission is the original.
Okay, so we'll operate
So
off
we
of.
really need to
first
operate
reader.
from the original, I believe.
Okay,
That's
perfect.
the one that was on the city website as the first reader version.
All right, so we'll all be working off the original. Everybody have the legislation? We're all good? Okay.
Ms. Jackson, if I could get a printed copy of this, if that's not too much trouble, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like a fresh one too, so thank you.
So it's the one.
Yeah, that's on there. So I've got it electronically, but just in case we do the edits and stuff, I can have it there. All right, so obviously we have all witnessed this go through the gamut over the last couple of weeks. We get the purpose of it, and the intent of the legislation. I think we're just trying to make that clearer to some of the of my colleagues on the council. I don't even know where to start. I think first, so we got through public testimony, and I think a part of what we'll do tonight is we just work through this bill in a timely fashion so that the staff can get out on time. We'll just kind of run through the amendment ideas from the committee, the amendment ideas from the staff, and then also proposed concerns that we got from the 2 weeks of public testimony. And I think we've all had a chance to run over that. I think the most disappointing thing is that half of what I've heard from the public testimony is not in the bill. And so what I think will be helpful as we create these amendments is that we create clear verbiage on what exactly the bill entails. And even I think when I was running back through, I'm like, when we get to chapter 2148 for use tables, and when we get to section 2148.010 for the tables of use, residential zoning districts, there has to be the current format of the legislation I don't think is sufficient for the general public to understand what's going on, because it just lists out the use, R1, R1A, R1B, R2, R2NC, R3, etc., but it doesn't detail what that means. And yes, it's, we can say, okay, well, they can go to Legistar and look up section 214802, tables use of commercial industrial zoning, but that is just too much for a constituent to process. And so, things like that are things that I took away that I think would help it be better for us to communicate with the
Okay.
constituents. But again, I don't know if would that ruin any legislation format? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm not even going to dive into, I had about how pissed off I was. I think we all know. And so let's just jump into it. The first line, obviously we have to amend. It says for the purpose of the purpose. So we got to strike one of those out automatically.
Alderman Gay, just before we get into this, could I just understand what is our objective? The next step is this going to rules next?
So
when it's presented next, do we want it amended? Do we need to get the amendments posted, or?
I believe so. And Cynthia or the Mr. City Attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong here. I believe that tonight, and this is what I plan to do, we'll work through this.
Okay.
Put together the amendments agreed upon by the committee and the staff alike. That will then go to law and the drafting office.
Yep.
Make sure everything's correct, and
Yep.
then those amendments are sent to the Rules and City Government Commission or committee, or do they read the original ordinance to make their own recommendations on it? I think.
Oh, no, they'll look at it
the
amended.
amendments
Okay,
are
yeah.
ready, we will look
Yeah.
at them.
Perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
because you're on rules. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And so, I talked to Cynthia earlier. I've said, look, we're under no rush here. Let's take our time. Let's try to get this right for,
Right.
we want to be transparent as possible here. Okay, so that's great. We got that process out. All right. So first line, let's scratch out for the purpose of the second purpose, just so that the sentence makes sense. Of allowing workforce housing, permit is da-da-da-da-da, commercial use, da-da-da-da-da-da. Let's skip through the ordinance introduced by, refer to Planning Commission, Rules and City Government Commission, and ordinance concerning the purpose of allowing workforce housing that is affordable to households earning 60 to 100% of the area median income. That is planned to be amended, correctly? Am I correct?
Do you have a copy of the staff report dated November 11th, the staff report to the Planning Commission?
We can pull that up. Yes, we do, I
Okay, because
believe.
on page 3 of that,
Okay, we should.
we
highlight
list the
those.
recommended amendments, and the amendments listed on page 3 and 4 of the staff report are the amendments
See
that
that?
we already discussed back in October, September, whenever it was. Those are all the amendments that you all previously reviewed and proposed.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah, that's.
We're trying to.
Hallelujah. Okay, so
if you-
that's great to know, because the last staff report that I was looking at was,
We're going to get to that in a second.
okay.
Okay, if we look at the staff report from pages 3 and 4 of the November 11th staff report, we listed all of those amendments in here with line numbers.
Okay, so let's stop now.
Huh?
I just want.
So we're done and we're leaving.
No, seriously, okay, so we could take those and, Cynthia, could you work with those and?
But let's run over them again for
I mean,
clarity.
once
Yeah.
we,
Okay.
we'll go over them, but do we have to have them all separate? Like, can it be amendment?
Well,
per
that's the
staff
plan,
report?
because the way the original legislation was introduced, I had to amend it on first reader. And so when we went through all of these amendments the first time, the plan was to carry those amendments as
Yeah.
one change, so that there's simplicity in the swap from the original version to the revised version.
All of these amendments you all have to introduce, do whatever it is that you do to to
Right.
say, here are our amendments.
Right.
Okay,
Just
okay.
in order.
Okay.
Okay.
So that they get incorporated, so they get introduced, so they get posted and introduced, however that process works. But we can go through these
Yeah.
again if you want.
Yeah, and I'd like to, and the
Do you
reason.
have the staff, do you all have the staff report?
Yep, page 3, we're looking at page
Okay.
3.
We do, but the reason I was confused is because I think we also have one from the 18th.
That's an addendum to the staff report, and and that has some additional recommendations that we haven't discussed.
Okay.
All the ones in the November 11th staff report are ones that you have previously discussed and agreed to. Back in September, we had that meeting of AHCEDC and HHW and staff, and we went through all of these amendments, and
Yep.
everybody agreed, and you all voted on them then, so.
We might
Okay.
want to revisit them. I mean, I see the one about parking.
Yeah, so let's run through this in its entirety.
Okay.
But this amendment does not also address, okay, it does, okay. Because that's line 24. So we're swapping the incomes with an
Right.
income that does not exceed 120% of the area median income. For the general public that's following along, and also for myself, because whenever, and I think this has to do with maybe formatting, and I don't want to step on your toes, but whenever we mention these income requirements, I think we do it once on the first page, and then obviously in the standards of use subjects to standards section 2164-645 workforce housing, where we go through all the income
Right.
requirements. If we could add language explicitly stating the income requirements for family, because again, I think that's so helpful for if I'm a resident looking at this and I'm not familiar
You
with.
mean as opposed to the percentage numbers?
Well, no, include the percentage numbers, but also if we could have a chart maybe that lays out, like if I'm one family, I think I can't go over like 78,000, right?
Teresa's going to explain to you why we can't do
It
that.
changes every year.
Okay.
You can, if you wanted to, I mean, we could give you as a separate exhibit for discussion purposes, we could give you something that says this year it is blah, blah.
Does it change by the calendar year or by the fiscal year?
Changes by the HUD year.
Okay.
And the HUD year is what?
Usually they come out in June.
In June. Is it too much of a request to include language that would require, I mean, because if they change every year, you'd have to come back and adjust this, no?
No, the percentage doesn't change.
Okay, just the income,
Right.
okay.
So that's why they
But we can give you a sample of what it has been, what it is currently, if you want something just for discussion purposes, we can give you a little exhibit.
Yeah, and I think if we could attach it.
that what you want?
Yeah, please, that'd be so great, and I appreciate that. And if we could attach it to the legislation so that the public can access that as well. I know when we've had discussions related to the bill with community groups and orgs, that's the very first thing everyone asks is, what are the income requirements? I'm assuming that they have been similar to the HUD requirements that we're using for the rental assistance legislation.
Rent, yeah, 80%, well, they go from 120 down,
Okay.
so.
We can make a
So it's
chart that
different.
says, that has a title that says HUD, HUD income limits, whatever it is for starting in June, as of June 2022 that would be through June 2023, right?
I already have them, so I can,
Right,
Okay.
and we can just forward that to the Office of Law and to the city clerk's office and have it uploaded as a new exhibit attached to the legislation. It would be a separate exhibit.
Perfect. That'd be great.
How's that sound?
That's totally
We
fine.
can do that, right?
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's totally fine. So we all agree there. We'll be smart on it, and our constituents will be smart on it, and that's the purpose. We
Okay.
just got to break this down for everybody. Okay. Next thing, it says line 40. The following shall be inserted: Title 17, Buildings and Constructions, Chapter 1728 Plumbing Code, Chapter 1728 090 Permits Fee Schedule. The charges for issuance of permits are the sum of a connection charge, a capital facilities charge, a capital facility assessments charge, and an installation charge. The charges shall be recommended to the City Council by the Director of Public Works and collected by the Director of Planning and Zoning, except that fees for workforce housing shall be 50% of the requirement. If I remember correctly, this was done to give
Incentive.
an incentive outside of the traditional requirements we could have.
And it is an incentive that we all agreed to, because it is an incentive that has been done in other jurisdictions throughout the United States as you know, to encourage workforce housing
Okay.
And to make it more affordable.
and to make it more affordable.
And to your knowledge, is that something that's done in the state of Maryland as well?
I don't know off the top of my head what jurisdictions we looked at. I don't, you know, I think Anne Arundel County's doing that. Yes, they are.
Okay, that's great. And,
Okay.
you know, I just wanted to be known that that's in trend,
Right.
you know, with the push for development of affordable housing.
Okay.
And I just wanted to be, you know, clear that in no way is this amendment providing an opportunity to a developer of affordable housing in a way to, you know, get around the system. This is done to incentivize them to build the housing. And would you like to speak to that? I know that's something that you've talked about in the past, and some of the public testimony that we had is, you know, regarding to us taking away some of the requirements, parking, and now requirements for this, et cetera.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Specifically in regards to parking, there is significant data. The Brookings Institute had a fantastic study on it that shows that parking requirements add about 5 to 30% to the total cost of units, whether it's just off-street parking or structured parking. There is a fundamental belief that by prioritizing this free storage of cars over housing for people, we are prioritizing vehicles. There's significant data showing that parking requirements induce demand for more vehicles. So getting rid of them is a good start to, one, addressing too many cars on the road, and then two, it lowers the overall cost of the units, because fundamentally, if you are saying that we can't build this because of parking, you are prioritizing the storage of cars over housing for families.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, I think we need to look at this from both sides. I totally understand the merit of what you're saying.
And this is speaking to both line
On
40
we
and line
skipped down to
101.
line 101.
No, I think they both have a lot in common, because it is creating an incentive for a developer to create affordable housing.
Yeah.
So you can speak to that. Go ahead.
Well, I just think because of the sensitivity of the receiving end of this, of the constituents, this doesn't help it be amenable to them. And the fact then that they're scared of cars on their streets or whatever. So I don't know if it's, I think it's something that we might need to look at in order for the bill to be more amenable to the constituents. That's all.
And so let's wait to get into debate on 101. We'll wait for that. But we can agree that on line 40, the incentive is appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll agree on that. and
Each dot is like, that's number 2 then?
Yeah, that was the second amendment we addressed.
Okay.
So let's move on to the next one. And by the way, we're making perfect timing, everybody. It's only 6:45.
Yeah, we've made it through 2.
So, all right, line 58, delete the projects out consist of any mix or types of dwelling units. So let me go to 58.
All right, we're deleting that line because we are adding, on the next page of recommendations, we're adding a definition to 2172, which is terms and definition. We're adding a definition for workforce housing. So that's why we're deleting it there.
Okay, when I'm looking at line 58, though, the line I see is the property shall be encumbered
Right,
by.
we're deleting that sentence.
Oh, okay, you're changing it to the property
Right
shall.
above.
Right above.
The
right.
property shall be encumbered,
Okay, perfect.
Section A.
That's actually line 56, so let's change that.
It's 58 in my copy.
Yeah.
Line
Okay.
50,
What is it saying on
I
yours?
didn't have to go back. I gotta go back to
50
first
what?
reader.
56, the property shall consist of any mixed
Yep.
Yeah, so that's 56 on ours as well.
So the
You're
copy
right.
that we
Our
printed
first
out then
readers.
from the city website has had somehow had the line numbers changed?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. We're deleting that line wherever, whatever number it is in the.
Okay,
Let me pull it up here so that we can make sure that we're looking at the same thing.
Kaylin brought up a good point that we use the word strike versus delete. It just,
Is it striking?
you're striking versus,
That's
Whatever language you all want to use.
make a note of that.
That's the intent. Strike.
Yeah, those
Strike.
those are again, these were
Okay.
recommendations that we put together with the staff and the commissions. Once it gives to the Office of Law, all of
Yeah.
those things can
Yeah.
be fixed.
Yeah.
Right.
Wordsmithing.
All right, so let's-
Okay, anyway, we're taking that line out because we're
56.
adding a definition later on of workforce housing. So then we just start with the B part, the property shall be encumbered by recorded deed restrictions, that. And then if you look at page 3 of the staff report, starting where we say, we've made a number, we've corrected the percentages in,
Lines.
line 71.
but it's not going to be line 71 because obviously the copy of the ordinance that we had, that we, we're using has different line numbers on it. I'm trying to pull up the one with the right line numbers.
Yeah,
I
'cause-
don't know how we got the
That
wrong,
one-
one that
that
has
one
different
does
line
work.
numbers.
Yeah, that one does line up correctly.
It does?
Yeah, the number 100 is on line 71.
Okay. What, okay. That's really weird. Okay.
So those two bullets are pretty straightforward. It's more wide, the workforce housing definition more widely used at 120%. Thank you.
okay.
That's
And-
been
and-
established.
And we'll have that chart for clarity. But my question also is, and there was concern expressed, we are increasing the limits, but people are still concerned that we're missing, some of our more vulnerable citizens. And so how do we adjust, if we're gonna adjust the income on one side, how do we adjust it on the other so that it's reflective of both income types?
Well, it doesn't exclude people at the lower end of the income spectrum. The way it's phrased is, your income cannot exceed 120. So basically the housing that is directed at people earning below 60% of area median income would still be accommodated in this legislation. I mean, the housing developments that are getting low-income tax credits are still going to be using, they're going to be meeting the needs of 60%.
60 and below.
Yeah.
And 60 and below would, I'm assuming, be about 35,000 and under?
Probably.
Okay.
Is that, sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
There was some email back and forth on that reference, the Baltimore reference. Is that correct?
I think it came from the alderman from Ward 8, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that a correct reference?
right.
That we're making the
No, we
sorry, I have
changed
to
it.
go back and forth here.
Okay.
On line 71, continuing.
There was concern in regards to the, I believe,
Oh, here it is.
of us using the Baltimore primary metropolitan
Thank you.
statistical area.
But I think we changed that when we
Right.
Yeah, we need to change that.
Do we know what, I don't have that written down for some reason.
That was definitely discussed, and I don't think it made it into the staff report.
Okay, so what is it supposed to say?
Well, I was under the impression that that would be the correct metric system to use because it's widely used, and I've seen this verbiage in other documents related to housing
They just
affordability.
changed the name of it, so I'll get it for you.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so we will,
But it's the it's Anne Arundel County, City of Annapolis.
we will provide you with the correct, we will double check to make sure that we have the correct name for whatever it is and fix that.
Okay, and that's so that'll be an
Okay.
amendment that.
Teresa's going to go look it up right now.
Okay, no problem at all. Take your time. And that'll be an amendment that we add at the end once we get, so what's that line?
Well, we could, this isn't published yet. I mean, we could, correct me if I'm wrong, it's just Oh, wait, you're right. I don't know if we can,
We're going to give it to you in a second.
yeah, I didn't know if we
Wait,
could
you-
revise their sentence somehow.
No, but
Well,
but
maybe a
she's-
minute.
She's talking about in regards to us tracking the amendments. We don't have a way to edit the recommended amendments, and so I'm saying at the end of these recommended amendments, we'll add in
that
on
would-
line 73 and
You can
update
read
to
your
the-
amendments into the record.
Yeah, but we got to keep track of them so somebody
Okay.
can.
I'm keeping track of it by writing on the ordinance.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
That
Sort of
like,
red line.
here we need to fit, I've underlined that it needs to be checked.
Same. Okay, perfect.
Okay?
I've just X'd it out and put a note there.
Right.
I'll follow
I
up
think
with you.
if you just make notes on your
Yeah, I think
copy of the ordinance, we'll be able to get it
Yeah, I
together.
think it's referenced 2 times.
Yes, it is. It will be referenced in this section, and then if you go to page 3, it's referenced again in number 3, 3 at the top of page 3.
Okay. Yep. On line.
So
80.
we're checking that one also so that we can give you the correct language.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a sticking point.
Yeah. But I'm glad that we were able to figure that out, and so
Clauses that you
we'll look out for that change as well. Next line was so we'll skip. We did line 71. We did line 79. And I'm comfortable with if the change to 120% doesn't exclude anyone. I'm comfortable with moving forward with 60 to 120%. That's fine with you all.
I don't think that excludes anybody. It just gives a little extra flexibility to ensure that units are constructed.
Okay. All right. Let's go to line 85. Delete the initial transfer of a home ownership unit to the original buyer of that unit shall be accompanied by. Okay. Why was that removed? Because that's actually included in the MPDU language, correct?
I think that the way I think the words rent, the initial transfer or rental of, I think the words or rental were added at some point to the legislation. I don't think we've taken that out.
Okay. The initial transfer. Yeah, it does say the initial
Right.
transfer or rental of a home ownership unit to the original buyer of that unit shall be accompanied by a certification from the city of
See,
Annapolis.
that doesn't read right, number 4, because the initial transfer or rental of a home ownership unit to the original buyer, I don't understand why the words or rental are in there, because doesn't 4 just refer to home ownership?
That's in the initial bill.
Yeah, and so
Yeah, I know, I don't know, it seems like to me that the language is somehow not correct. We have to wait for, I think it should just say the initial transfer of a home ownership unit to the original buyer
Transfer or
or
rental.
of that unit shall be accompanied by a certification. I think you can't,
You don't transfer a rental.
you're not transferring a home ownership unit, so the or rental is, I don't understand why or rental's in there. I think that needs to come out.
So line 85, instead of delete the entire sentence, let's just delete rental.
It's in
And-
line 84.
Okay, well,
I have 85 on mine.
see,
Well, not in the one
So-
James gave us.
Okay, so I'm looking at the copy that I was just handed.
Yeah.
And on page, it says line 84, the initial transfer or rental of a home ownership unit.
That's correct.
Why is it on line 85?
No, I was looking at the old version.
yeah, and because in the staff report it says 85.
Yeah, I know that because the staff report was using the version of this legislation that we were sent by the Office of Law, and I guess it was changed.
Okay, so
Okay.
so we'll just make that change. We'll
We're
use
taking out the or rental.
we'll use 84 and strike rental. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Everybody's in agreement there.
Yeah, we're all working on the Granicus.
Okay. All right. Everybody's got the same paper now. Okay. Line 91. Delete if the original buyer of a home ownership unit transfers title to that unit within 10 years. The transfer shall be accompanied by a certification from the city of Annapolis that the transfer's household income does not exceed the maximum allowed for that unit. I think the concern from constituents here was that what happens if I meet the maximum? Am I expected to sell my house, quickly? So can we address that really quick?
I think it was,
See, I
if it
thought was
transfers
right.
after 10 years,
Right.
it makes it sound like you could sort of skirt the intent of this if you transferred after 10 years. But like it only, the restrictions only transfer over if it's transferred within the first 10 years, but after that, I think that was that was the concern, even though that was not the intent.
Okay, so hold on. So I've applied and I'm eligible through this program. I purchased this home and I live in it for, let's say, 4 years. And I find someone that wants to buy it, and I'm transferring the title over to them. While I'm in that process of trying to transfer the title over to them, the city will be verifying the income of the buyer to make sure that they basically meet the eligibility requirements for a program.
Okay, so Teresa needs to come back, but I'm pretty sure that what we had decided back in September when we all reviewed this, that we were going to delete both 4 and 5, totally delete these things from the legislation, because we were adding, if you look at page 4 of the amendments, where it says, line 120, the following addition shall be inserted: the director of the department may make and enforce regulations in accordance with the provisions of Title 20409 necessary to make effective of the provisions of this section. So I think we had decided, because that these things would be part of those regulations that we developed, and we wouldn't put them in the ordinance at all.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
So
That we would take this out?
It
and
does
take
make
this-
sense now that it says delete. That-
Right,
yeah,
right.
Okay.
I think that's what we all decided back then, that we were just,
I think you're right.
You're absolutely right. So let's jump to line 120 really quick on
Right.
page 4.
but it's not going to be on line 120 in here, because
Yeah,
once
it'll-
again, it's going to, this just is going to get added.
It'll be 118.
Right.
It'd be, which page?
It would be, we would be adding some new sections after one, where, where it says, where you have line 118.
Okay.
On page 3.
Yeah.
That's where we would be, adding, the director of the department may make and enforce regulations in accordance with the provisions of Title 20409 necessary to make effective the provisions of this section.
And why do you think that is better than,
I think we had a big, long conversation about these requirements that were in here about the transferring and the home ownership for 10 years, and decided that we needed to just put that into the regulations that we're going to develop. Do you remember wasn't that the gist of that conversation?
I'm trying to remember.
That we were taking these two things out?
Initial transfer.
That's what we had from our, okay. But,
I mean, first off, 4 and 5 do just seem redundant.
right,
Let's just start there. But the thing that does concern me is, and you can probably explain this to me, if we do remove 4 and 5, there will be some, I'm assuming the power is now rested in the director will include that regulation of the program and making sure that any transfer doesn't exceed the income.
right. There's a whole, but it's not just in the director. I mean, the whole process that's set up under 20409 requires that if a department is adopting regulations or guidelines, there's a whole process where they have to be posted and advertised and for 30 days, and they come back to the council in some form. I think they go to, I think it's rules in city government. The department's only done this one time. I think the Historic Preservation Commission
We
adopted some stuff that had to go through this whole process.
We just did it as well with rental assistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same
So-
process.
Absolutely, same, familiar with the process.
So you'll have another look at whatever the regulations are that get developed that we need to have on a day-to-day basis in order to administer the program.
For comfort with the constituency, though, I guess in another addendum to the staff report, the policy recommendations that we're putting forward, essentially, which has some 4 and 5 in it, can that be added for review?
Well, we don't have those regulations developed yet.
I mean, but don't we have a general understanding of what the regulations would be as just with the office's experience in this, and I'm thinking in particularly would this be similar to the review process of the apartments that went through the similar process, or townhouses that went through the process in front of Newtown 20?
I see developing regulations as probably being more similar to how we administer MPDUs, right?
Right, I mean, typically, on anything that's funded by the HCD, the federal government, whatever, there's income restrictions. And those, they manage all that income checking on rental.
Okay.
On our MPDUs, we manage it every year. We require that people submit their income and get recertified every year. So we don't do it on home ownership, because once a person buys their house, they bought it.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to go, and check their income and move them out. So we only do it on the rental side.
Okay, so it's only done on the rental side, which, makes total sense. My problem with the home ownership side is, what if I am eligible for the program, I get, put in the program, and, now I have this home, and instead of me living in the program, I'm now renting it out for, $500 extra. How can the
How do we
planning?
prevent that from
Yes.
happening? I mean, typically what we do is we check, we always check SDAT. Right now, we only have 9 houses,
Okay.
so it's really easy.
Well, you could-
We'd have to set up
Right.
something a little bit more,
Right, you wouldn't be able to get a rental license. We would check it at that stage if you came in. If you were doing something illegal, where you were renting it out and we, and we found out about it, that would be treated as if it were a violation. I mean,
we are actually caught somebody doing that.
Okay.
Right, and-
No, and that's why I asked, because I think it's important that the public also know, because there was comment made by, somebody in the affordable housing business that said that the staff doesn't have the capacity necessary to manage a program like this. And I found that hard to believe, because I know that you have the capacity to manage a program like this, because I've witnessed it. And so,
That's an important point.
Right.
Especially if the public
but
is
we did,
listening. 'cause
right,
that
as
was-
Teresa said, we did have somebody who got caught doing this.
We took them to court.
Took them to court.
One way of sort of addressing your concern would just be to clarify the statement that we've put in the draft amendment for line 20 that just says, it could spell out some of the concerns that are in your mind. It says the director of the department may make and enforce regulations in accordance with the provisions of Title II, 04090 necessary to make effective the provisions of this section. I mean, you could spell out the things that would be enforced,
Well, we could, but the regulations that we develop are going to have to come back
Yeah.
to the city council for approval, and if they're not adequate, you're just going to tell us these aren't adequate, you need to fix them. I mean, they're going to be posted for 30 days on the city website, the whole same thing you did with, so I feel like we don't really need to get into okay, and they have to say this, this, and this.
Yeah.
Can I say something, though?
Yes,
I agree with you in theory, but given there are a lot of concerns about people going in and renting their house, either temporarily or, so I think if we put in some clear comments about those things that are really of concern to the public, it will help this bill, and it's what we intend anyway. So you don't want to, do everything, but some might be a good idea.
and again, I think this just gives it, I think that gives it a little more teeth, because a part
Okay.
of what this has been said is like, oh, this is a pushover
Well, you can
process,
add
or-
anything you want to.
But I don't want to cloud it up either, and I
Right.
trust.
I'm a little
yeah.
concerned about coming up on the fly with some specific language to add in there without giving it some thought about what it would say.
Okay.
Because then, we're stuck with it because it'll be in the code.
Yeah, somehow we have to let the public know that there are going to be rules and regulations under separate cover, if you will, that will have to be
Right.
approved. So my mic is not on. But we have to make it clear that I understand what Terry's saying, but we can't have the code be all inclusive of rules and regulations. So we
Right.
have to let it, have that language in there that rules and regulations will be under know,
Right. Well,
implemented under separate
right.
cover.
Then you all just need to come up with what you want that language to say and make it part of your amendments.
Okay, and that's totally fine. And we went through this process, like I just
Right.
said, and you're absolutely right. It was presented in the newspaper. It is extremely costly, by the way. The general public should know that too. It's about $12,000 to post a 30-day ad in the
Oh, the
Capital
ad.
Gazette. And so it is an extremely costly process, and it's, takes a lot of time for the staff. So you all should be commended for that. But basically what they do is put it in the news or create the rules and regulations or guidelines, publish it in the newspaper for 30 days so that the general public is able to give input on it at some point. It comes then back to the Rules and City Government Committee, and they are able to, take recommendations from the staff and other colleagues, et cetera, on, regulating the policy.
Right.
And
And I believe they can have another public hearing. The 204-090 allows them to have a public hearing at that point on whatever those regulations
Yeah,
are,
that's Ross's
correct?
bill.
Yeah, that was his bill.
Maybe at minimum, I would suggest, changing the may to will, and that might,
And where is that in one?
where, for the amendment to line 120.
We can change the may to shall. Shall make
shall.
and enforce regulations, because then it's mandatory. Shall is,
Shall.
it should say
Yeah,
shall.
shall.
Let's change it to shall.
Okay.
Whereas the director of the department shall make and enforce
And
regulations.
if you want to, let's just think about if we can,
This as well.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. She's like redlining it.
Awesome. That's great.
So as a matter, let me ask this question because I'm looking at my notes and it was addressed very vocally that we, I'm almost quoting here, that we don't have the bandwidth to implement this program. Would you say that we do? Do you have any concerns about implementing this program with the city staff? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to address
really?
that concern. I mean, I heard earlier that it's similar to the MPDU
Right.
program, and we've been successful in implementing that.
I think as with the implementation of any program that any department takes on, if we find that it's problematic, to do things, then we come back to you all and say, we need more staff.
Right.
I mean, there's so much additional stuff we've been asked to do in the last year or two that, we probably do need more staff. And would this make for more staff? Probably not initially, but I think we would be able to identify. I mean, it's not like we're going to all of a sudden have all of these projects coming in all at once.
That is another concern that the public thinks that this is going to open the
Right.
floodgates.
I think they don't, they don't,
Okay.
Valid concern.
As a barometer of that,
Let's get to that because I think that let's finish
floodgate
this.
issue, nothing happens that quickly in the
Yeah,
city.
we can get through the timeline and stuff in a second. Let's,
Right now, the rental
my
will be
notes.
covered by the.
no, you're
Yeah.
totally fine. I want us to be conscious of time. That's
Okay.
I would just sort of add, that, the ADU legislation that was adopted last year, it received a similar amount of scrutiny.
Floodgate.
We have not received any.
We've got one, I think we have one or two, I think we have one application in and one that somebody's talking about filing. I mean, it's been like a tiny trickle.
Things
And I
move
wouldn't even
at,
call it a trickle, I would call it more like a slow drip.
it was
things move at a glacial pace in this town.
It's been like a
I
red
think-
wave.
Yeah, it's like those sprinkler applications on Main Street.
So,
All right. So let's do. So we got line 120 down, Alderman.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to again state clearly so everyone understands, this does not open the floodgates for massive projects just occurring everywhere.
no,
This is going to be simply allowing a gradual process to take effect.
it allows a process that will still take a considerable amount of time to navigate, during which, no, it's not going to be, there's no way it could be a floodgate. It takes so long to get a project approved anyway. I mean, this does make it easier in some ways to move forward, but there's still a lot of steps to getting a project reviewed.
And when you say easier in some ways for a project to move forward, you're essentially just talking about the incentives that we've added.
Yes,
Exactly.
I'm talking about the fact that we're, saying, okay, developer, you only have to pay 50% of the fees.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, I don't see anything in this legislation that makes me go, wow, floodgate. I don't understand why people think it's a floodgate. It's,
Okay.
So again, from the staff, this will not open the floodgates.
we do not expect it to open a floodgate.
All right, so if we say floodgate one more time.
Gate of flooding.
Okay, we've addressed that. Let's move on.
Line 101. So
Okay.
We've got out of 85, we got out of 91. We're on, and we've only got 3 amendments left. So we're making.
No parking will be required. That was an amendment that you all wanted added. That is an amendment that as we go further into this, when you look at the Planning Commission recommendations, you're going to find that that they had some pushback on that, and I think we've heard pushback on that issue. But that is an amendment that was, that everybody voted on back in September.
Can I
Okay,
add
and,
something? Can I add
Yeah.
something though? A number of people have said to me, that says it's not required. Does it mean that some developers may not provide it?
That is
doesn't mean-
correct.
Right.
Just because it is not required does not mean it does not get provided.
Right, and I think some developers, given the market and everything, so I think we need to make that clear as the bill goes forward. It doesn't say they can't provide it, it's just we're not requiring it.
A good example is the proposed Willows project, which is currently coming in at
Thank you
under
for coming out. Bye.
which is currently coming in at under the required parking, but parking is still being provided.
And the reason that we worded that amendment that way is just to include the fact that and we should change follow to
The developer.
we should any parking provided, we should change that to shall comply. And the reason we added that second clause was to clarify that if you provide parking, you
Okay.
still have to meet
Okay.
all the standards that are in 2166.
The developer may choose to provide parking to make the development more attractive.
Well, we could, and
Yeah.
we could add that, no parking shall be required for workforce housing, however, and then we could just say.
Well, it
but-
says
Right, I mean, if you wanted to add, I think it says it already, I mean,
We're fine.
okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could add very clearly why this is an important issue that I have put forward, and I have had discussions on this on potential amendments for the bill moving forward.
Please feel
but
free, yeah.
on this specific portion right now, what I will say is that parking requirements for housing, you are prioritizing storage for cars over homes for families. Parking requirements lead to higher costs, they lead to more pollution, they lead to less green space. And if we are going to follow through on the environmental goals that our city sets, along with the housing goals that we have all talked about, we need to move away from arbitrary parking requirements.
Can I ask a question about how you do, so when you all do amendments on this, so when you present your report back to the city council in general on this, do you not have, do it like some kind of paper where you say we're recommending this amendment, and then you explain why?
Yeah, the sponsor has to introduce the amendments.
Right, I understand
first,
that,
and-
but do you do any kind of a written paper that said the HHW recommended the following amendments, and then each one you explain why you recommended the amendment?
So once the amendments are presented, every amendment that is then considered by the Rules and City Government Committee before it's presented to the full council, the sponsors will have an opportunity to present to the 3 members on the Rules and City Government Committee why we introduced
Right.
that amendment. I am not putting 10 or 11 amendments in on one amendment. It'll have to be
Separate amendments, but.
in particular
right.
But we have the.
So I guess what I'm suggesting, there are going to be so many amendments to this that you might want to also have
So far.
something where you take you say, we're recommending this amendment, and then you explain why you're recommending it, that you can give out to the rules, so that would incorporate, like for
We'll
the
be
parking
there.
thing, why,
Yeah.
what
Well, what's
Brooks
common
just said.
practice is that if the planning commission or the planning department has recommendations for amendments and they're documented as such, we can just reference that.
Right, but
Per
you,
the planning commission, we've incorporated these amendments per the
Right.
planning commissions or the planning department recommendations that you will see attached to this legislation.
right, I understand that part, but I think what you all were just talking about was explaining why you were doing those amendments.
Sort of taking it one step further.
Right. It's just a suggestion.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we definitely need to clarify, we're addressing public testimony.
Right.
And I think
Yeah.
we'll have an opportunity again
Okay.
to do that before the Rules and City Government Commission,
Okay.
and then again when it comes back on second reader to the full body, prayerfully.
Thank you for asking.
Okay. So,
Okay.
all right.
So, and as the alderman had mentioned, line 101, he's passionate about the parking requirements. I support him on that. I support for other reasons even more, because if you look at some of these workforce housing communities and the average income, typically they do not have cars. They rely heavily on public transit. And so, in fact, I should have sent to Julian. I was just actually on the Maryland DC border in a single family zone community where Penrose has just done a project that does not have parking requirements, and it fits in perfect with the community. And I took a ton of photos, but again, the parking requirements are in particular for workforce housing should be minimal. I'll also add, I see, I got you. Yeah. I'll also add, there is state legislation as well that has been proposed, I think in Montgomery County, that would allow for developments within certain distances of transit facilities to avoid parking requirements as well. And so I think, again, if we are looking at the focus of pushing for a transit-focused city, that's another reason why this amendment should be considered. But I am also of the mindset that if we have to create a cap, we should. I'm a fan of caps because I think it gives leeway to the individuals that have concerns about the lack of parking, but it also allows for the individual developers to go below the standard necessary so that they do have flexibility. I think that's important. I don't know why people get up here and like, oh well, the developers are going to make money off of this. Well, duh. What building or project or facility have you ever seen built where there's not revenue attached to it? People have to make money. And if that is a way to get them to provide a need, that's what you have to do. Alderman?
I have two things to piggyback off of. One of them, which the most recent thing you just said is, developers could make money off of this. They are providing a need. People need housing. When a grocery store moves into a food desert, our first thought is Giant's going to make $1 or $2. It's this community now has access to something that it needs. When that Clay Street Market recently opened up into an area that was previously inaccessible for fresh and healthy produce, we weren't worried that the new entrepreneurs would be making money. We were happy that they were providing a need. The second issue I want to piggyback off of what you said is many folks who work in workforce housing may not have cars, or many folks who live in workforce housing may not have vehicles. Again, because of the addition to your monthly rent or to your monthly mortgage payment that parking requirements cause, if you are forcing them onto people that don't own cars, you are essentially taxing that family for something that they are not using. We need to keep that in mind. And there is so much data proving the link to more parking spaces leads to more cars. And I will stop talking about parking.
No, actually, I have to bring up a really important point because the alderman from Ward 8 has mentioned several times that this legislation should include references to larger lots, and particularly the lot that has the giant Dunkin' Donuts and Wells Fargo business there, which could potentially be an adaptive reuse, which the state also has legislation currently on to incentivize municipalities and counties for adaptive reuse. Is that something that the staff sees possible with this legislation, or would it further, would it create a bigger problem than necessary? And I'm referencing in particular, in this legislation, I'm guessing under the under section C, where it starts to get into density setbacks and all of that, those requirements, would it be possible to add an amendment that would allow for those shopping centers that have larger lots, like the Safeway or like the Giant, to take advantage of that and create mixed-use development?
Alderman, I would just say that in my view, that is a primary example of a site that would benefit from this legislation.
Okay.
I mean, from the comprehensive
Can you
planning
talk further to
perspective.
that, please? Because that has been something.
Well, we're adding it to all zoning districts, so if you have a shopping center that's zoned like B2, for example, and workforce housing is permitted in that district, then you could do it subject to
Yeah.
these standards we're developing.
Of this bill.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly, that's why I'm.
Right, if you go back to, we're adding it to all the use tables.
Okay, so B2, I'm assuming Eric, is that?
That would be
Yeah.
like the Grouch Center, Eastport Plaza.
Currently, I think it only allows for residences above retail, which is a good thing, but it would not allow for standalone multifamily residential today, so.
So, but it would allow for, like, in the Target or whatever, where you got bop.
Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
it's in its current B2 zoning, the options are very limited, but the R4 zoning would give it more flexibility and allow for the workforce housing. We see it as an incentive. I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind with today's zoning, with our MPDU requirement, the property owner, the developer would have to provide a fixed number of moderately priced dwelling units as a ratio of the total number of units, which might mean that the majority of their units would be for that higher income demographic, and then you have the MPDUs. This legislation would ideally create more of a mix, more of those MPDUs, because they would have an incentive to do that.
And that's fantastic. And that's another thing that the delegate had mentioned this past weekend. I think the body, actually before I got here in 19, I think you were a part of that, but you all were
they were taking the fee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
successful
We
in
got rid of
removing that fee, which
Yeah. Because of course, the developer
would
would
pay
also
the fee.
instead of
Exactly.
providing the units.
And so, okay, that's perfect. And that makes me feel good because we don't have to add an amendment. But I did want to suffice the concern that the alderman made, because I did think it was valid. And I would like to see development in those areas and it create flexibility, because it's an already, a high population, high traffic area. And so it also creates traffic solutions, in my opinion, because they'll have to add to the infrastructure. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that for the answer to that is that's a perfect application of this ordinance.
Okay.
It also shrinks the travel circle for the amount of places you have to go that you can walk to instead of getting in your car and driving down Forest. If you may, Mr. Chairman, if I'm not interrupting anything, I have one question related to what you just asked, and then another piggyback on the MPDU.
Please.
So this is a question I genuinely don't know the answer to. I wasn't quite sure if our colleague from Ward 8, when he was referring to the redevelopment of those strip mall properties and the large parking lots, if he was talking a total tear down the current strip mall, rebuild it, retail on the bottom, apartments on the top, which would be allowed under this ordinance. Would it also, let's say there's a large portion of the parking lot that just does not get used, a good example being the plaza with the Safeway and the FedEx on it. There's that side lot that they had to do to fulfill their parking requirement that just does not get used.
Are we talking about on Forest Drive?
Yes, the one on Forest Drive. It does not get used outside of the occasional truck parked out there.
And we did a rally there.
And a fine rally there. So outside of truck parking and a rally staging location,
Bus parking, and RV parking.
and RV parking, etc. The point is, it's not used for everyday retail activities. I've never seen it used for that in my entire decade of living here. Could this ordinance allow like the shaving of that off into building
Or
residential
workforce housing?
units? Or I don't want to.
That's a complicated question because we'd have to look at probably at how that project was originally approved and why it was required to have that lot and what's that lot is supposed to be. Okay, an easier way to explain this would be, let's take the giant shopping center on Bay Ridge Road, where that site actually has at least something that's called a pad site, which is at the corner of Edgewood and Bay Ridge Road, and that's just superfluous to the rest of the shopping center. And I think they have actually looked with that shopping center. They have so much parking they could eliminate some parking, and there would be the possibility of actually building something else on that site. So it's very specific to the terms of how the project was originally approved too.
Okay.
And I'm assuming the landowner's
Right.
preference too, because at that point you are subdividing your plot, correct?
Well, that was, yeah, you could be subdividing it off for something else. I mean, there are a lot of complicated factors with any kind of redevelopment like that. So for example, but a shopping center like that could come in and they could ask for a different type of parking determination. I mean, we already have provisions related to parking for the shopping center itself to have where they could ask for an alternative parking, what's called an alternative parking determination. So they could reduce the amount of parking and they'd have an area to redevelop, a bigger area to redevelop than if it was just a pad site. The Safeway one, I don't know the answer to. I don't know what that. I can give you the example with the giant one because I know that property.
But no,
But you, okay, the Eastport Shopping Center, I mean, that.
I didn't want to bring it up.
Well, I'm bringing it up because they had that corner of the site. First of all, the theater, which had a big parking requirement many years ago, that is gone. And then you have the corner property where Abby Deal has her produce business now. That was a gas station. So that land is available for redevelopment. And that's how so things happen. At the other end of that shopping center, where there used to be a grocery store with a big parking requirement, I think is that still the gym?
Yes.
So things happen in terms of, so you have an original project that had this big parking requirement because of the mix of uses, and over time that all changes, so they have more land, they can have more land available to redevelop just because of those changes.
And from what I've seen, the gym seems desperate to turn their excess parking into something else. They literally have a turf plot on the side of the property so that people can do outdoor recreation.
Right.
When you talk about, and this is what makes me mad, because when you talk about redevelopment and revitalizing the community, that's exactly what we're talking about. Give these businesses the opportunity to expand recreational opportunities or infrastructure or to add, resources to our city. That would be perfect. If and I'm just, obviously this has not been approved, but when you go through the Eastport Shopping Center, let them modernize, add the stalls, et cetera, all of those things, and then give the authority to the existing retail to change their parking infrastructure as well. If they want to change it into green space, how could anybody be against that, and particularly environmentalists? I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, you are doing my YIMBY heart just so much joy right now.
I don't know. I'm getting indoctrinated. But anywho, let's move on.
I think the key word is redevelopment because, new development is.
Redevelopment.
And this legislation, and this is not untrue of other legislation. We have a vision for how this is supposed to work. But a year from now, we could come back and be saying, we need some tweaks on this. I mean, we need to, we didn't realize when we were doing this that we also needed to do such and such. I can't even tell you what that is. So, but to achieve the goals that we're all identifying, we may have to come back and ask for some modifications to the legislation. It's very hard to totally envision everything that we would need to to make something work.
And I think that is consistent with legislation since I've been on this council. I've had colleagues who brought legislation before this body a number of times. And
So I
Right.
think, again, for the public, that these sites come with existing, I'm not sure of the right word, but encumbrances, if you will, right? Deed restrictions, that, all that stuff.
Right.
And so, again, for the public, this doesn't give the developer carte blanche to,
No.
you know, it doesn't override all that. All of that
And there are
stuff has
so
to
many
be-
other requirements,
Yeah.
even if you have a totally developed site, like a shopping center whose name I will not mention, if you're redeveloping any portion of that, and it's more than 40,000 square feet, and you have to do the afforestation under the Forest Conservation Act, so you have to come up with a significant plan for planting trees.
Yeah.
You have to do stormwater management.
Right, and-
I mean, there are these things come into play with that are there, and there's with the redevelop. You don't just get to go in there and build.
Right.
Yeah,
You
and
still
I
have to
think
meet all those other
we need to
requirements.
reiterate that somehow in this bill, that those, you know, adequate facilities and storm, maybe
Well-
we say it, but it still comes up.
Right.
Well,
You've heard.
Yeah.
about
You know,
this, so-
I guess we've talked about this and you have to comply with the code. So adding something to the code to say, and you have to comply with the
I know
code
exactly.
seems ridiculous
I
to
know.
us
But-
because
but-
we don't do that with any other kind of legislation where we say, we're adding this, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, you have to comply with the rest of the code. I mean, that seems kind of, I understand what you're saying. I
know.
think that needs to be in any statements you make about
Yeah.
defending the legislation, but I don't think we want to start doing a zillion cross-references to like other stuff that you have to comply with because we'll miss something.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of
That
redundant.
was just my number 4 public testimony comment.
I know that. And we've talked about that. Okay.
I do want to, I apologize, since we went into adequate public facilities a little bit with stormwater and these other things, I do want to touch on this issue, if that's all right.
Please.
There has been some inaccurate information put out there that this bill is exempt from our adequate public facilities law, that this bill skirts our adequate public facilities law. So, Mr. Lashinsky, if you can help clarify our APF rules and regulations, those kick in at 11 units, is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
So if a project comes in at 6 units, that does not hit our trigger for adequate public facilities, is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
So that's not skirting our law any more than me not getting pulled over going 25 and a 30 is skirting traffic law. It's following it.
Right. I mean, this is just consistent with the current adequate public facilities thresholds that we've set, you know, as a city. I mean, if there's a feeling on the council that those aren't at the right threshold, then that could be changed. That's a different bill.
But it
this is
needs to
not
be changed for all housing.
right. It would be a discriminatory thing to say that, you know, workforce housing should have to meet a different standard than single family housing or something like that. You know, and that's
I would agree. Now, I am not sure in the will of my colleagues to put in an explicit text as amendment. It must follow the standards, by all workforce housing must follow the code. I agree with the sentiment that we do that for
Right.
nothing else.
We say that subject to standards about a zillion
But-
times, right?
And I feel like it is covered excessively, as
Yeah.
you stated, Alderman Tierney, that it says subject to standards constantly. So
yeah.
it does follow those standards.
Right.
does.
It seems kind of ludicrous to put in here that we're adding a use to the code, and by the way, it has to comply with the code. I mean,
I know.
that doesn't even make any sense to me to do that.
If it calms feathers, so be it.
Well,
but I agree with
I
the...
actually disagree because I don't think that the staff always and its attorneys and are always saying that the code is overcomplicated, and so we shouldn't complicate it any more than what it is. And let's close out on adequate public facilities because we're running on time and I want to
Okay.
But you know, yeah, it meets those requirements, and I've also been a part of a number of conversations at the Planning Commission where where there have been discussions with board or the directors on ways to get around the adequate public facilities. And I don't want to say get around, but I know, for example, with the recreations, if you don't meet the standards set for your site, you can apply for like up to a half a mile away or something like that.
Well, that's in the code.
Yeah, exactly. with parks
Those
and stuff.
standards for and if the city council does not feel that the standards currently in the code for recreation are adequate or they should be rewritten in some form, then that's a separate piece of legislation, just like you are now looking, there is a group now looking at new standards for police that will get added to the code. And we understand legislation is being developed for that. But that's if that's a whole separate topic. If APF is not then this.
We're not going to change those requirements in this
You can't.
bill.
Well, you can't add any. You can't change them in here because it's even in a different
And I would
title
agree
of
with
the code.
I would agree with Mr. Liskinsky that it is a discriminatory practice
Right.
to subject it to workforce housing. All right, so let's move on to line 108. This was also one that we had a concern about the definition of common open space.
It's now line 106. So
Okay.
we're removing what that is, and then if you go to the next page of the staff report, we have a whole new thingy about
Okay, and so for the
common
public,
open space.
for the public following along, what is being removed is 106 that says, common open space, permanent usable common open space shall be identified and dedicated for passive recreational activities or limited active recreation subject to the following requirements. The area required for parking lot, landscaping, or buffers shall not be included in the common open space calculation. Okay, and that is being changed to,
We added some more specifics.
Right.
Just to be more clear about the intent of that common open space, that, indoor facilities could count towards that, like a rec room or a club meeting room type thing.
I'm not sure how that,
Right, it's A, B, C, D, and E on page 4 of the staff report.
well,
with
that's
the
like,
law office to it.
yeah, but I don't know if that would, because
Do we need A through E?
I do remember at the last meeting there was, that we did, there were two definitions of common open space.
This is, I think okay, the idea that we can't have different definitions for common open space in the code is not true. We currently have different, this is the definition we're using for common open space with workforce housing. We don't need to have the same definition for common open space for workforce housing that we have, say, for a planned development. You can have different definitions.
I didn't know that. I thought.
Yeah, well,
code
it's not
definitions are
like,
constant through
right,
the-
it doesn't have to be the same. I don't think that it's not the same. We have different definitions now already in the code, and I can't off the top of my head, but this definition with these standards are one that we came up with and all agreed to back in September that we agreed would address.
Bye, congratulations.
Right. Would provide some specifics and, that everybody felt were necessary rather than just a generic thing.
So all right, I'm totally fine with this. I remember the conversation and us going back and forth. All right, but the only concern I had is D. Common open space shall be in public ownership or covered by an open space easement or controlled by a homeowners association or property management company. I thought we were striking property management company.
That was something that everybody wanted to add so that we would make sure that, so if you don't have a homeowners association,
It's still owned by some.
it's right.
I guess the more important thing that I wanted to just make sure was that it stayed an asset of the community and it stayed accessible to the community. The example that we used was, I think, of Spa Cove condominiums, where there was an issue with the deed, or wasn't something placed in the initial deed. I don't know, but they basically robbed us of access to the Chesapeake Bay, and so if we don't want to be in a similar situation with any recreational properties in the future.
Right. Well, okay, common open space shall be in public ownership or covered by an open space easement
I do want to clarify. I think the issue you're referring to, Alderman, at Kingsport was related to their adequate public facilities, not the common open. Like this was
the one in
This is
Eastport.
the one,
they were using that, I think, to meet their adequate public facilities, whereas this
okay.
is just, this common open space is, the intent is really for the residents, not for the broader public. I mean, that's the intent of this.
well, you could have common open space that's in public ownership, like.
You could.
And isn't it Annapolis Walk where the park, there's that park that
With access, water access?
Well,
their common open space was turned over to the city to manage, but it's used by all the residents there. Is that Annapolis Walk where it is, you know, where there's that
Yeah,
little,
where they're doing like the soccer field and all that stuff right now.
yeah, and there's a building there.
Yes,
and,
yes, yeah.
Right.
I don't want there to be a situation in the future where, I don't know, let's say a developer builds a recreational facility or something and there is an issue with some original language that they've included and basically the residents then lose access to that resource that was in their community.
Well, if you have a homeowner, if it's a project where it's going to be home ownership units, and I think we would require, then you have a plat that gets approved that that shows the open space, and it really has to do with making sure that the notes that are put on the plat that cover the open space are very specific as to that, you know, as to those kinds of details.
Yeah, I think D is misleading in that if I hear you, Alderman Gay, this is for the residents. I think D makes it look like it's a public park. You know, public people will.
Well, I get that
you
from
know.
public ownership or covered by an open easement or open space easement. Is that not, am I
think the
interpreting that
intent-
wrong?
The intent was that it would fit into one of those circumstances. So it could be a public park, if that makes sense in the context of the development. But if not, at minimum, it's within an HOA or a property
Right.
management company. I mean, I think my recollection of the intent here was that there's a number of circumstances that might exist, and
Oh, let me use this example. Haka, and they're going through right now the CNI development. They have some ownership in the Hawkins Cove project. There have been efforts to, modify and change the Hawkins Cove landscaping, etc. Could they be potentially put in a situation, assuming that this would apply to them if they were creating some larger development? Could they be put into a situation where in the future they lose the ownership of that public easement to the Hawkins Cove property because of any language that we're putting in line D?
Well, isn't there a record plat for that project that would have to be amended if you were going to change that? I mean, isn't there an existing easement?
I'm not familiar with the records of their own, we actually need to have a survey done to be
Right.
frank about that site, because I don't believe there's any sort of dedication of their Hawkins Cove ownership that requires it to be a park or public open space.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that. It should be. And so, I mean, that's the intent, is to
Are we-
move towards
are
a
we trying to
situation.
Yeah.
To simplify, are we trying to say, for example, in E, provision shall be made for the ownership in perpetuity? In perpetuity, I think you're afraid of losing it.
Perpetuity is the intent, I think,
Yeah.
what we're hearing here. That maybe is the key word.
Conversion shall be made by the owner.
So I think when you get to E, provision shall be made for the ownership, conservation, and maintenance of the common open space. See, I think this is one of these issues that when we were encouraged to come up with more specific language about common open space, then you get into these what-if things about
This is
it.
too detailed because it will
Right.
change on the development.
But I don't
we're
think that
talking
there's,
about.
I don't think there's anything in here that precludes. I think we're okay with this because you have to, you have to show how, if you look at E, we could take out D and just have E. Provisions shall be made for the ownership, conservation, and maintenance of the common open space. If you take out D, you still have E.
Yeah.
And then we would just deal with who owns it and
Yeah.
who takes care of it and who maintains it under E. And that would be
Right.
allow more flexibility. I think we added D because everybody seemed to think that E was not
Sufficient.
was not specific enough. But I don't think that. I think we could do without D and just have E, honestly.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. Erica or Terry, do any other concerns?
We were just talking offline for a second, and Teresa and Jackie might recall, I believe the Planning Commission also had concerns about, there's a certain scale of project where providing that common open space may not make sense, if it's like a
Right.
triplex or something, or a quad, that you're sort of cutting into the potential for the housing to be there. I'm trying to find the Planning Commission.
I got that right here. The Planning Commission had questions and recommendations on 5 specific items. Should common open space be required for all applications tendered under this legislation, including smaller applications? Common open space might not be possible for a duplex or even a small courtyard building of 4 to 6 apartments. Should anything larger be required to provide common open space? How much larger? Clearly, one size does not fit all. Nonetheless, there are cases in which some amount of common open space is called for, and if so, some guidance to the Director of Planning and Zoning for his administrative approval should be given.
Okay.
Do we have I apologize, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
please,
I broke regulation. Do we have a kick-in number for open space requirements?
That was my
That's why
question.
we did not put a number in here.
Okay.
Which we do have for other, like if you're doing a plan development, there are 3 types of plan developments, and there are very specific percentages about how amount of common open space. We didn't do that with this because we wanted to build in that inherently into this, the flexibility that, okay, with this project, it becomes a determination we make through the process, through the review process, that it's not a specific percentage.
But Jackie, with this, it says that all developments must
Yeah.
have common open
Yeah.
space. So,
I don't- right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can't,
So that's,
Why can't we say that open space shall be provided per da-da-da-da-da-da, the existing code, right? And if.
Because we need a definite, because the plan development regulations
Don't apply.
don't really work for workforce housing the way it's
Okay.
set up. We need
Okay.
something.
I got
I
you.
mean,
Okay.
um,
I thought I heard you say that it is applicable.
I don't know how we would, I understand what y'all are saying about should we, maybe there's I think the idea that we're going to say that maybe you don't not required to provide common open space, I don't know how we would.
or would that be in the regulations? Could we have something in here that talks about smaller units, just what the Planning Commission said, that could be determined?
would
I'm
we?
thinking like Ward 1, these multi.
See, then we're going to have to come up with some kind of language where we say, and shall not be required for projects that have fewer than X number of units.
But it
And,
shouldn't even be based off of the unit. Should it be based off of the lot size?
Well, okay, the lot size and the number of units would be related. I
Okay,
mean,
okay, perfect.
So, yeah, right, but I mean, do we really want to go there? I understand what you're saying. I don't know what that would be, that we would we would say that you don't have to provide. I think that's a rabbit hole to say, okay, and sometimes we're not going to require common open space.
Okay.
That's a rabbit hole.
So, Terry, I'm so sorry.
But see, there's 2 parts of this. One is the larger developments that are expected. The other is the smaller infill that many of us on the commission thought could happen, in the existing single-family neighborhoods. That's going to be private yards. That's going to be, those kinds of
Well,
developments.
not
would most likely-
necessarily. If you're doing a four unit, a quadruplex in a single family community, and all the property outside of that quadruplex is common open space.
It might, but I'm talking about something smaller than that.
Yeah, but how would that?
Even with a duplex.
So now you're confusing me, because how does it become common open space? Shouldn't it be the open space of the 4 renters? and not the, because, for example, in an existing duplex, I wouldn't say that their property or their backyard would be open space.
I think what's missing in the definition, that I guess what I'm hearing in terms of the questions is that there's not a clear understanding of the intent of common open space in general in our code. You know, I mean, but basically, is not my understanding of common open space and its uses. It's not implied that it's a broadly public open space. It's designed for the residents or part of that development.
Right, that's what it is.
And that may be, if there's I think, again, there may be some circumstances where there's an opportunity to provide a space that could be used by the broader neighborhood or even more broadly than that. But the basic intent is just to provide a shared open space for the people who live there.
But we can't use what's posted here as this amendment because it requires it. And so do we want to make that change so that it doesn't trigger a requirement for smaller developments, correct?
I think when we say that provisions shall be made for the ownership, conservation, and maintenance of common open space, I think implicit in these standards is that if you had a small project, through the review process, we would designate what the common open space was for that, even for a small project. And it may be that I'm trying.
I mean, the reality is every single project is going to have setbacks from adjacent properties. You know, in the R4 zone, it's 30 feet in the rear, 20 feet in the front, 5 on both sides. I mean, that's where this common open space will be carved out.
Okay, and so that's what I was thinking, but it was throwing me off when we said that it had to meet needs of public use, because I'm thinking, well, why? If it's,
I think that is confused. Well,
because that's an option.
It is an option. It's
but
you don't want to say that it can't. I mean, there are times when you would want your common open space to be in public ownership, but I think if we eliminate D, then we eliminate that whole debate about whether it's owned by the people who lived there, or by a company that's renting apartments there, or it's being,
Yeah, let's delete D. And Mr. City Attorney, if you could weigh in on this for a second, because I don't know if in a situation where, if like I'm renting, and there is common open space and I'm paying a rent, could I then at some point turn around and say, like, hey, I basically paid the mortgage for this land, so that I basically should be entitled to some ownership of that? Yeah, no problem. So if I'm like in one of these newer developments, is in a duplex or triplex or whatever, and I'm paying a set amount of rent to the landlord, could I then turn around and say, I was paying for the use of the public open space, so I'm entitled to ownership of this property or ownership of this land?
Well, you wouldn't be owning it if you're renting.
But do you get what I'm saying, though?
To a degree, it's highly unlikely. I'd be happy to look into it for you, but it's unlikely.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure, because sometimes if you end up paying, for if you're renting this place for X amount of time and it's open or its use is for the public, I just didn't want there to be a gray line. But I agree. I mean, I do think it'd probably be.
You would, if you were renting. I mean, I see the public ownership is just, that's an option, because we do have projects where the common open space is in public ownership that the city has approved, but normally it's just common open space for the use of the people who live there, whether they rent or own.
Let me ask a question. Is public open space addressed in the adequate facilities review under Parks and Recs at all? Just wanted to see if there was any correlation.
No,
with
it's
that.
public ownership is an option that would be identified during, and there may be cases where we would say, okay, so for example, you were doing something, where, say you have a waterfront property and you're doing a workforce housing project, and we have the opportunity maybe to as part of that, get a public access to the water as part of that project development. Why would we not want to say, well, yes, the residents here can use that, but we want the public to be able to use it also and
Okay.
build it into the project approval. I mean, I think there are times when or this is a really big project and they could do this community building, but why would we want to just restrict that to use by the people who live here? If it would, maybe it would get turned over to Recs and Parks and then it would be utilized by the greater community. I
You
mean,
can't possibly codify that, is what I'm saying.
no, you
Yes.
can't. That's
It's up
why
to the
we have
development
just,
process.
right. It's one of those things which becomes, and if I could remember off the top of my head, we actually have projects that have some that with public ownership, some where it's just owned by the people who live in the project.
So circling back to this amendment, we are introducing a definition then, or what?
Your mic is off. I think we are
So here's
introducing-
an example that you all can relate to. At Park Place, the site where the big open area,
Yeah.
that, I think, was originally part of the common open space for that project. But that's going to be, and it's covered by some kind of easement that would ensure that it would be developed with something that would be for the greater public to use, but providing a recreational amenity to, not just to the people, the residents and owners of buildings and properties in Park Place, but to the greater community. I think
Okay, and they
that's,
do art and stuff there. Okay.
right, okay,
All right, so let's strike D,
okay.
and we'll keep A, B, and E.
And
And
C,
Yeah, I'm sorry, A, B, C, and E.
all right.
And we'll
okay.
have our common open space. Obviously, Cynthia, we'll talk about that and, figure that out and,
And
yeah.
add the words in perpetuity somewhere.
Okay. All right, so we're done. We've already done line 120. That's all of our amendments
No, you
No,
have
no,
the
there's
new
another-
definition one. Keep going.
of what?
Next page.
It's on the second page of the staff report and
I mean,
under,
but that has to do with the MPDU.
no, we're adding this definition of workforce housing.
We've already discussed that, if I'm not mistaken, ma'am.
We discussed that we were removing the other part there, but we're adding this. This is an amendment,
Oh, okay. Hold on.
okay?
Kavy, did you get that? Insert workforce housing there, the term.
And then we just had this general recommendation at the end of our staff recommendations, that one of the things that had come up during the discussions about where these regulations should go was the fact that we have MPDUs
So, wait,
currently in Title 20.
In the addendum of the staff report,
Right.
we did include F for common open space, which says
The addendum.
common open space shall be identified on the subdivision plat.
Okay.
And restrictions on its locations and use delineated. Any change to the use or location of common open space shall require the approval of the Department of Planning and Zoning through a subdivision amendment. So there
Right.
while we just spent 20 minutes.
I forgot, because we hadn't looked, I was taking the documents in order.
So
Okay.
keep everything for common open space and just add F.
What page?
From the
are you on?
addendums. I went to the addendum to the staff report.
There's an
Oh, we're on the
addendum,
next
okay, so,
document.
and we should, because we also, in the addendum to the staff report, which is dated November 18th, we also added some language with the parking, Brooks, do you have this? Because we had added some language with the parking requirement to make it clearer. No parking shall be required for workforce housing, but any parking provided must follow the standards set forth in,
We're looking at this document.
it says in section 2166, but it should actually say 2166, 110.
Yep.
Denim staff.
And that's what we discussed last. All right, so look, here we go. It's 8 o'clock.
Can I add one thing?
Yes,
And I'm
please.
sorry,
No problem.
some people at this table are really not going to be happy with me, but I wonder if this section did say open space rather than common open space. Again, we've talked about really large projects. Some of us on the commission feel we might get smaller projects, 2 or 3 units on a lot in a single-family neighborhood. Does not make sense to require them to provide common open space.
Correct.
They can have private yards. And I'm
Right.
probably on left field here, but if you term this open space and made A, open space shall be provided, and then everything else stayed common, would that give the ability to provide private open space, for the community, for individual homeowners? You don't require common open space for We've at least 2 units, maybe 3 now, I think. But that's just a thought.
So you're basically saying remove
Because for smaller projects, I'm not sure this, just like the Planning Commission pointed out, I know we don't expect to get a lot of smaller projects, but this certainly would kill smaller projects because they'd have to provide a common open space.
So you just want to remove the word common from where?
I think that would work.
Okay.
Yeah, if you took common out as the title and common out in A.
Well, you have to take it out in all of these.
No, you wouldn't, because you still could provide common open space in the larger projects. And you would.
Okay.
I get what you're saying because it say on A, common open space shall be provided for passive and or limited activities
Yeah,
of
we're missing
recreation.
an if
So
there.
if we just put
But they don't
open
wanna-
space shall be provided for passive and or limited active recreational activities, it would eliminate the requirement for
Smaller projects.
yeah.
I think that's the way I'm looking at it. You could, for the larger
Well-
projects, you would, and they would want to provide common open
See,
space.
the problem with just eliminating it at A is then you get to C, where you say areas devoted to landscape buffers and stormwater management shall not be included in common open space. We're going to have some bright guy come along and say, well, I don't have to, I can include my landscape buffers in my open space because it's a small project. That's what you're going to have. It has to be. We can eliminate the word common from the whole thing.
Well, look, how about we'll do this?
No,
Because
that doesn't, leave it as it is.
no,
I'm just telling you what people would.
It's going to have to be addressed.
Well, let me ask this,
Please, yeah, go ahead.
back up. Is common space required for all of these developments? The answer I'm hearing is no, right? Are we requiring common open space for all of these applications? Are we requiring it? Because that's what it reads right now.
That's the way I had envisioned it. I mean, I think that's the way when we reviewed it, we
As written,
envisioned it.
that is-
I do understand the point that
And I think-
perhaps we need, but I think that
fit.
then if we're going to not apply some of these requirements to projects a certain size, that's going to require some additional thought to decide what projects do these things not apply to.
Okay, and I think that's something that we can take the time to put the thought into. This is the only amendment that we've seen not to be able to agree
Right.
on. So look, this is what we'll do.
Oh, yeah, you've covered it, though.
Yeah, we've-
You've got it because you're giving them an opportunity.
And
Well, common open space may include community meeting rooms.
Yeah, but
Right.
that's not sufficient though, because
There's
it
other
would still be
options.
requiring, except for a smaller project, that they include a community meeting room, which would be even worse. And so, all right, let's break here. We're at the last amendment, literally, of all of ours. We'll come back, and we'll meet in private, obviously, before our February meeting to discuss the correct definition of common open space. I'll, make sure that the Office of Law is included in that, just so that we can be clear on everything. So we've got through all the amendments.
No, we haven't gone through all the ones that are in the addendum.
Could
Okay,
we?
hold on one second. Let me look at the addendum because
Go to page 2 of the addendum.
November 18th?
Yes, we added that. We added
I got
another.
all right, so look, we got the parking requirements, which we've just agreed on from the addendum. Check. The common open space we'll come back to. Site design and plan review. Site design and plan review is a requirement currently as one of the proposed standards for use subjects to standards, Site design plan review in accordance with requirements. To clarify, this is so technical to me.
It's just a pure clarification.
Yeah, okay, so we don't need to go over
We're
that.
just adding it to the standards for workforce housing. We're
Okay,
adding
yeah.
that.
That's
bold-
technical.
Okay.
So we don't need to codify
And then
that.
after that, that whole section, part that we have after, in bold caps, we have site design plan review in accordance with the requirements of chapter 2122 is required. That's all we're recommending adding to the legislation.
doesn't
After
currently say
that,
that.
where we go on and on, if that was just explaining why we're adding that.
That's
Right.
key. We got to put that in.
I'm not saying it doesn't, but I'm saying it makes no difference if we
Just
agree on this or not. It has to be put
It's
into the
not,
legislation.
it's not introducing anything new, it's just
No, it's just
clarifying.
clarifica-
It kind of
but
goes into that category of,
Yeah,
it will
no.
comply with the code.
The E is my
Right,
number
but we-
6 on
we-
public testimony. It's like, is
Right.
this, yeah. This
That
is-
came out of some conversation that everybody had about, we need to add something, because then, and then we were just explaining in the addendum what that would mean if we added it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so it's just that
for the
one,
general
that,
public,
and
it
that's the
discusses
end of.
minor and
right,
minor and major site design
right.
modifications.
That's the end of our amendments, but then you also have the planning commission stuff.
Well, look, we've addressed that in our amendments, and that will be how we move forward with the presentation.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you don't want to discuss their recommendations?
We've went over
like-
their amendments in great detail and addressed their concerns, and several of which we've discussed tonight at length, including
Okay.
the parking and the common open space definition. We need to come up with an agreement on the common open space definition. I will coordinate that meeting between the planning staff and the Office of Law so that we can, just get some clarity there. As far as I'm concerned, the amendments that we've addressed and went through tonight have been agreed upon by the members of the Housing Human Welfare Committee. And so we'll start to get those into the appropriate form
Okay.
and be prepared for our February meeting.
When is your February meet, oh, you mean for the February
Yeah,
city
I'll
council?
get that. I'll get the date together, and
Right.
you'll see that.
But you, the rules,
It's typically the third Monday of the month.
okay, so
So
the rules in city
will get
government is
rules will
meeting
get the
February.
amendments before us first
Right.
Friday in the month, and then it comes
Okay.
back to us.
So are we, rules will want to have those amendments on Granicus.
Okay, yeah. So
No, I mean, seriously, they'll.
that's why we have
yeah.
to get them started. But we
Right.
So
can't.
you
yeah.
guys need to get together and finalize your draft of your amendments.
I've just stated that. Yes.
Right, and get them posted, and then we can all, and if you want us to review them one more time, after I know we've made a number of little tweaks here. We are happy to do that.
Okay, so we'll do that, and I'll see, we'll see. You all probably don't even need to come to the February meeting. We'll get everything figured out in between then, and if necessary, we'll extend the invitation again. Any other questions or concerns on 04022? Seeing none,
Can you clear, okay, so February 3rd.
The amendments that we have just went through tonight in great detail, all except for common open space, will start to be processed in the legislative format necessary.
Okay.
Okay? Then all the amendments that are prepared and ready by the first Friday in February will go before the Rules and City Government
Right.
Commission. Anything not addressed at that meeting, the first meeting in February, will either be done in a special meeting or will be done at their first meeting in March. Any additional amendments or tweaks or changes that we need to make in between now, the Rules and City Government meeting, and our meeting on February, the third Monday of the month of February, can be addressed then.
Okay, so you're not envisioning that this is going to go back to city council in February?
No,
for vote?
absolutely not.
Oh, okay, I'm just, okay.
No, definitely not. I was not,
Okay,
no.
gotcha.
We're looking at March at the earliest.
Yeah, and I'm not even gonna rush that. I want to get the
early.
amendments in
Okay.
correct order.
Because there may be more amendments that come out of rules.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But that's not I'm not the chairman of that committee, and so.
Well, I understand, okay.
Yeah.
We're-
All right, so are we just all set on these amendments tonight, all except for common open space, okay?
Right,
Right, and I just wanted to let you know that Baltimore primary metropolitan
Oh, right.
statistical area is actually called the Baltimore Columbia Towson, Maryland Metropolitan Statistical Area.
Yeah,
But
that's important.
I want to double check it tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
Something in the back of my head said that something changed. and
Awesome.
I
And
can't
Mr.
get
City
it on my
Attorney, that
phone.
addresses the concern I had with the Ward 8, when they were questioning legalities of it, and so I think that'll be sufficient.
I get
Can you
that
make
a
sure you
lot.
CC him on that, please?
Pardon?
Can you make sure you CC him on the name change and all that? That'd be great.
oh, is Tripp writing up all the amendments? Thank you, Tripp.
All right. Again-
One more comment, just as you mull the common open space, we might just want to be consistent with, where that threshold is currently with other types of multifamily in the city,
Yeah.
and that's why distinguish it here, but
Yeah.
that's
It's
just
really
another
open-
thought.
it's
We've
open
done this
space.
before.
It's a type of open space. Common
Yeah.
is one, and there's other kinds of open space.
Yeah.
I mean, because again, and this is the last thing, really, because I want to get you all out here. I know it's so late and you all got to be to work tomorrow. It says right here too, on page 3, common open space, permanent usable common open space shall be identified and dedicated to passive recreation. I mean, we could have maybe even used that, but we'll get into discussion on that later. We could have
Right, I
just
mean,
kept it, but
we could have something that says common open space is not required for projects that have less than X number of units, but I call that a rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I mean, people, yeah, so let's address that. But, all right, this was good. We got through most of it. This was the reason that we're elected to do this ugly stuff, peeling back the onion. So I actually enjoyed the time spent together. No intentions of rushing through because I didn't think the amendments were serious, but obviously, we just have to be useful of staff's time, yeah.
Can I just two non-tangible comments from testimony is removing, our residents removed from the process.
No, we've addressed that already.
I think we have.
And we've addressed that in Amendment E.
I think we have in this conversation.
Yep.
Are
I think
developers
right.
setting the rates?
No,
No.
we've addressed that also.
And that was established by the income requirement section, correct?
But we discussed that
I think it's
tonight,
really
too.
important that we add that amendment about site design plan review, because that ensures that it's
Public
a
is
very
involved,
general
yeah.
caveat thing to a
Yeah.
standard, because that's the assurance to the public that there will be a process
Yeah.
that requires
Public process, yeah.
a public process.
Okay, yeah, so under the addendum to the staff report to the Planning Commission, let's just make sure that in our notes for this, we have the E, which we said 30 minutes ago, would be added, okay?
We
All
have the E.
right, seeing any other questions? None? Okay, that closes out the discussion
we have
on
other stuff?
04022 for tonight's meeting.
What else do we have?
05022, again, will be postponed to our next meeting in February.
Oh, wait. Workforce housing, do we have a motion? I recommend favorably with amendments.
No, all right, yeah, all right. All right, I'll make a motion, I'll make a motion to postpone 04022 until our February meeting.
Second.
All in
But
favor?
do we have to motion that the amendments are favorable?
No, because we aren't sending, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Not
yeah.
yet.
Since
Okay.
we
don't
are,
have anything on record.
since, I apologize, point of
Yeah,
point
go
of
ahead.
order, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I believe we don't need to up or down the amendments.
Right, 'cause they're not
because-
formalized, I think.
Yeah, since
Yeah.
they're just
Yeah.
discussion at this point,
Okay,
so.
sorry.
Which I was just about to say, it may postpone it from getting to rules in February. That's fine. We'll take our time. We'll just try to get these amendments, in order.
So we're going to draft amendments, but they're not going to be introduced.
We'll have to figure that out. I don't want to take time to go through, yeah. No,
Caitlin's got 'em.
I agree, but my point is that is something that can be figured out from the Office of Law and just passed down through us so that, we have a clear understanding of the schedule moving forward. I am, all right, let's take the time to do that. Cynthia, when we get through the amendment process, understanding that if we vote tonight to move favorably the amendments that we've just discussed, that will require you, just your one person in the office, drafting all of those amendments and getting them prepared by the first Friday of February.
Which is the rules meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Caitlin's described,
Okay, but it's not about the tracking of it, because I think we've all done a really good job tracking the amendments. It's just a matter of she has other stuff going on, so utilizing your time, do you think that the amendments would be prepared by the first Friday in February? Or should I just postpone the legislation tonight and we'll get the amendments to the Rules and City Government in that first meeting in March?
Cynthia Roeder, Office of Law, Policy Analyst. Your Plan B is probably the best plan. Robert's Rules of Order recommends not having a lot of small amendments. When you have to have a lot of amendments to fix something, they recommend a more overall broader approach to it, and that's, your Plan B would allow that to happen.
Okay, so this is what we'll do. I'll make a motion to postpone our the 04022. Oh crap! But if I postpone it, I have to set a date. So let's
questions,
just wait.
but Cynthia, so what you're saying is we could have, because I had done this before, like amendment number 1, we could reference the
table it.
planning,
Just for tonight.
we could have amendment number 1 addressing all of the planning departments.
Again, I don't think the.
Yeah, we don't-
I don't think
I know
it's
what you're
the.
saying, though.
Yeah, the amendments is just, is she gonna have time to have all of those amendments, have the meeting so that we can get a definition of common open space, have them drafted and formatted in
Yeah.
time by February the 3rd. which,
have to have another meeting before February 3rd.
and that's why I just said I would have to set a date,
Yeah.
because I was thinking we could do a special meeting, but,
You need to have a meeting with maybe Kayleen and Cynthia
If-
and scribe these amendments so that they make sense somehow.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
please, Mr. Schoenemeyer.
I do believe we can just postpone action on 040 today, and it wouldn't really impact anything. And if the amendments are prepared in time for rules, excellent. If the amendments are not prepared in time for rules, that's not the end of the world. We can request that rules not take action until the amendments are prepared.
Yeah.
But if you
I-
postpone, don't you have to set a date certain?
That is
Just
to my
until the
knowledge.
next meeting, I think we can.
But again, I'd be postponing the legislation until February the 21st, because that'd be our next meeting of the Housing and Human Welfare Commission.
Would that take it away from rules?
I'm assuming so.
No, rules could, rules doesn't depend on your review.
Yeah, we're just.
They're a separate standing committee, aren't, Trish?
Yeah, but what would they be reviewing?
That-
We wouldn't have any amendments prepared, is the,
It would
They
be off
have
the
the,
agenda.
they have the same thing you all had. They have the staff recommendation and the planning commission
All right,
recommendation.
so,
Don't let them look at it until the amendments. These
But they
amendments
probably
so
are not going to,
important.
I mean, whether they want to look at it without your amendments is a different topic.
and that's why I'm saying it would be, I think it would just be ridiculously confusing for you, myself, and the attorney to
Yeah.
sit through another meeting where they go through all of those same exact amendments and try to
Oh,
get
we
it.
were looking forward to
So
that.
here's what we'll do. I'm making a motion to postpone 04022 until February the 21st.
Second.
And we'll work on everything in between. All in favor?
Yeah, whatever.
Or can I get a
I will second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? None.
What's February 21st? Is that the next
That'll be our next housing meeting, because
Okay.
February the 20th is President's Day. So thank you all so much. Appreciate the time. So sorry to keep you. 05022 will be the first item on our agenda at our meeting, and then we'll roll over with this. And so appreciate it again. We've already postponed it. We just voted on it. Yep. Perfect. Thank you all so much. That concludes our meeting.
No, wait, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman?
Motion. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right, done.
I'm stressed. I'm stressed.